Ladies and gentlemen, this is Scott Pollock, Chief Editor of the Critical Post Chicago, reporting. Welcome to another edition of the Goldwater Report. Thanks again for tuning us in, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate it. Please go to the head page of the Critical Post Chicago and click on an ad. Google will pay us. There's a couple of new articles featured at the head page of the Critical Post, a new White Hats report, and an article about how a police department helped a cab driver. This current perspective and opinion has a couple of parts to it. Please allow us to bend your ear in a couple of different directions. We hope you'll find it informative and worth your while. Ladies and gentlemen, in the church of the media, the new reality TV genre of political propagandist pundits having a conversation about themselves and their opinions with each other is one of the sickest things that I, as a chief editor, has to monitor. I monitor it so this audience doesn't have to. As well, audiences that tune into this garbage are apparently addicted to the idea of entertaining themselves with these conversations. Perhaps they're watching this stuff to find out what their opinion should be. Personally, I don't understand the preoccupation. These so-called journalists and book writers are the new stars of what has become the national soap opera. Who said what to whom, and where did they say it? How did they say it, as well as all other manner of nuanced, shall we say, political persuasion has been all the rage, it would seem, to the casual viewer. The audience shares for this kind of drivel range between 6 to 8 million for nightly network news shows on ABC, CBS, NBC, and perhaps PBS, and to 1.123 million for the cable channels on any given evening. The total population that voted in this past election was just over 128 million for Republicans and Democrats. 65.8 million for Clinton, 62.9 million for Trump. The voters who turned out for other parties or reasons was logged in at about 10 million, bringing the total number of votes cast at about 138 million. The 3 million advantage for Clinton obviously came from large population cities in New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, Florida, and California. Electorally, as we all know, Mr. Trump shattered the Democrats' so-called blue wall. Considering the TV ratings and internet traffic, it's not exactly clear there was any proportional effect on the voting totals. If we take into account radio audiences which are clearly Republican, not much is added to aid any insight. All in all, if you look at it from a one-off single view total for the news universe in America on a daily basis and from the perspective, only a population of under 32 million people were actually engaged daily. It begs the question, how did the rest of Americans who voted reach their decision to cast their ballots? Yesterday's inauguration speech by President Trump was being described as radical by everyone on the left and troubling. And the right had a number of laudatory comments ranging from Reagan-esque to remarkable. No one called it poetic. President Trump was plain spoken and repeated his campaign messages. The alternative propagandists on the web channels spent their time in the lead up to the president's inauguration stoking fears of civil war and insurrection and speculating that the president may get assassinated in some cases. It seems that the more absurd the claim, the more audience it draws on YouTube. From the looks of it, people are driven to the idea or drawn to the idea of blood being shed, not much different than the days of ancient Rome's gladiatorial euphoria. If that's the case, it's certainly insulting to consider that many Americans can be so superficial in using these mediums to inform themselves of the issues. However, ladies and gentlemen, it is glaringly clear that who is President of America does affect the world and the citizens on American shores. Former President Obama showed clearly he could slice and dice the American public and create divisions like no president had ever done as effectively before. The propaganda channels of our news culture no doubt aided that effort, and it certainly worked. So, President Trump is now about to be put to the test. Who is saying what about whom is the political soap opera of the day. It's filler material. It's entertainment. However, nobody in the so-called press really gets what just happened. So let me explain this from a salesman's perspective, as I've been a salesman at various times throughout my career. When you're involved with purchasing something, you're informed from a promotional perspective what you can expect to pay per the latest market information about any particular item. That's called marketing. What that's called in sales talk is also known as the shill, or the shill price. No one in the propaganda press could sell an ice cube in the desert to a thirsty man. They wouldn't know how to close a deal if their life depended on it. They wouldn't know how to ask for the order. However, they understand a different term, and that term is marketing. The continual and incessant drone of messaging, and messaging their intentions at that. With regards to President Trump and what he did, in terms of the previously denoted definitions of what a shill is, Donald J. Trump shilled the world. He tossed all the conventions and everything on the political landscape table onto the ground so he could reset the table according to his view. President Trump has shown to this anchor desk he's a pretty shrewd operator. His Twitter feed was more powerful than all the tabloids, and it still is. He put everyone on notice across the world. America intends to be open for business in a different way, and the Democrats are still rubbing their eyes in disbelief. Obviously, it remains to be seen whether this shuffling of the deck can do anything to relieve the collection of American anxieties in the long run. Some in the constitutional conservative camp liken his ideas on trade to Herbert Hoover or Teddy Roosevelt. His prospective cabinet is a stew of political curiosities, and in other cases, like Senator Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, for transportation, as a pandering political appointment for the Republican establishment. Is President Trump going to give them marching orders, or is he going to devise his marching orders from their council, or a combination of both? Are the paradigms of the current world order going to hold true to historical precedent, or are things so different now in terms of trade and war policy that something unheard of or not considered will be seen, establishing yet again new precedent? Conservative pundits would have us believe that certain things in life and business have shown themselves to be immutable and are time-tested traditions of human endeavor and behavior. President Trump's term in office is about to show the world whether they are correct, or if in fact the market and human behavior has changed in small, imperceptible ways to the naked eye. Anyone in business will tell you one thing for certain. Trying to get into the prediction business about what the market will and will not do is a fool's errand. In spite of that fact, there are plenty of fools who still dare to rush into that arena. The banking party Democrats are here to instill divisions along racial and sexual lines. They scream equality for all. They're children, and they're an adolescent politic. The banking party Republicans, in today's terms under Mr. Trump's watch, have moved so far left they're now in large part, though not completely, what Democrats used to be in the 1950s. In the end, the banks will always win. If President Trump was actually serious about restoring the Republic of the United States, he would decommission the Federal Reserve as a first order of business and put the Treasury of America back in charge of printing its legal currency debt-free. That's not even been hinted by anything the man says. What he has shown is he plays his cards close to his vest. He's the best political bluffer I've seen in my lifetime. I enjoy watching him make the Democrats and the leftists of the world, in the press and the world stage, blink time and time again. He's exposed their adolescence and their fears. However, if he doesn't reform the banks and their printing presses in the long run, he'll have changed very little. Until citizens of the world and America understand that currency is not a storage of value, but merely a measure of work output per the current market in any given country, they'll not understand there's no value in debt. Currency value, therefore, is a measure of sweat or capital equity that we agree to use instead of money, because money is more finite than currency. There is only a certain amount of money that has been mined from the ground from where it springs forth. Material and intellectual value are the only things for which currency is useful for, saving the users of currency from using the club or intellectual guile to steal the objects of their desires from another who may possess them or who may have created them. That's its only utility. Currency is infinite and readily expandable. Money is not. Currency requires faith in the printing process and its supply, and who authorizes that supply and creation. Money has been the darling object of the ages since the historical record of Earth's people began. No matter how one views this, and it's not a matter of debate, though the financial community is extremely deft at managing currencies, it seems they're ignorant of what the item known as money actually is. They confuse it with currency. If President Trump doesn't do something to change who prints America's legal tender, he's just another member of the bank, and no one in the long run will benefit enough to the point of restoring the American brand of liberty. There's no question. The Europeans, along with the rest of the world, haven't a clue either. The bankers have done a tremendous job of marketing their particular brand of propaganda, which keeps everyone but themselves in the dark. If the Constitution was in force, the only thing that would be acceptable as American money would still be honest weights and measures of valuable specie, that is, gold and silver, as was originally put into the contract between the several states during the formation of the Union after the Articles of Confederation were replaced. The Articles of Confederation were replaced because at the time the several states were having a commerce problem, which revolved around the fact that banknotes in one state were not being honored by other states and other banks across state lines. The several states had a currency problem. That is a fact. The annals of the minutes during the Constitutional Congress of 1787 and 1786 bear that witness. The question remains, though he may have a ton of it, does President Trump himself actually know what money is and the difference between money and currency, because they are not the same, as I've just mentioned. Money has intrinsic value. Currency does not. If he is as uninformed about money and currency as all the rest, the long arc of history will continue to show American liberty is still in the clutches of the bankers. Nothing will change enough to make a difference. What does save America? And where America still reigns supreme is that she has a robust velocity of currency through the hands of a sufficient population of citizens. She has a robust market. It is also true the bankers in Washington, D.C., Chicago, San Francisco, and New York, and Miami, along with their corporate minions, are doing a poor job of managing America's economy on behalf of her people. They may have tried to steer the market completely into their own coffers, yet America's market is still too robust enough to exclude all of her citizens from participating in the market to some extent, small though it may be for most. This is the origin of all of her political strife. If everyone had enough currency or money, the means to accumulate it through work, to participate in a certain amount of affluence and comfort, political strife and discomfort would cease to be an issue. The banks know this very well indeed. There's nothing wrong with capitalism, were it to be practiced in its pure form, but so far using governments as umpires to ensure an even hand is dealt to all in terms of opportunity has been shown to be completely corrupt. Crypto monopolies around the world are still in control, with the banks in the lead position, and the antitrust laws are merely window dressing for the public to perceive as a check or some kind of ineffectual negative on that activity. The antitrust laws are not active in any effectual manner for the populations of the world at large or here on American shores. President Trump may show he can manage the economy better than what we've seen in the past. But wherever he compromises with the banks without decommissioning the Federal Reserve will show he is either unaware or doesn't care enough to get into that battle for the American people. There's no indication he's going to do anything about it. He will not activate the printing presses of the American Treasury Department. So, the bankers in Congress will continue to dangle the shiny objects of social issues, with the unwittingly ignorant propagandist talking heads on TV and radio marketing their invectives, and all of this activity is just a distraction to market cars, soap, pharmaceuticals, material appliances, clothes, women's makeup and lingerie, and the host of other consumables, real and intellectual, all the while keeping the vast portion of the good people here in America and around the world in the dark. To them, the bankers in Congress and the bankers themselves, ignorance is its own virtue. For the bankers in particular, ignorance of money and currency is all that's necessary to keep the game of three-card Monte afloat. Our civic responsibility is to know the difference. Again, President Trump has shown no indication he is going to activate the United States Treasury Department on behalf of the people, whom are presumed to be the sovereigns here in America. Again, this is Scott Pollock, Chief Editor of the Critical Post Chicago, reporting. Thanks again for watching another Goldwater report. That is all.